Efforts to ban books are at a 20-year high in the United States. More than 1,200 requests came into schools and libraries across the country last year, demanding bans on more than 2,500 books. That's up nearly 40% from the year before, and the vast majority of those books were written by or about members of the LGBTQAI community and people of color. The issue made its way before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week, where Cameron Samuels, who grew up in Texas and now goes to college at Brandeis, shared their experiences with some of the books most targeted by ban requests.
Mike Curado's Flamer illustrates a queer Boy Scout, bullied and traumatized. I saw myself in the book, having faced similar harassment in school. Flamer gave me words for my trauma, but it was banned. Censorship bars students from age-relevant materials, leaving them unable to realize their actions can traumatize others.
Cameron joins me now, as does Traci Griffith, the director of the Racial Justice Program for the ACLU of Massachusetts. Cameron and Traci, thank you so much for being here. So I'm wondering if you can give kind of an overview about what is happening across the country right now. What are we looking at? Because we've seen this massive push in schools and libraries about what access students and children can have to which materials, and it feels like it's a cultural phenomenon. What's going on?
Well, as you said, this is a nationwide phenomenon, right? It's happening all over the United States, even here in Massachusetts, which is something that's very important to note. And we recognize that there is a concerted effort by a minority of people that are looking to control what other people and other people's children have access to.
The concern that we keep hearing over and over is just about parents wanting their children to be protected from information that is inappropriate, right? Like what's being called, people will go so far as to say pornographic material or, you know, explicit material or things that are just inappropriate for children of a certain age. That's the onus that is publicly being said that it's put behind this. But I feel like, yeah, go ahead.
I don't think anybody wants children to have access to inappropriate material. And I think that Cory Booker said that yesterday during the Senate hearings, right? The Democrats don't want, small children to have access to information that would be harmful to them. And the Republicans don't want, small children to have access to information that would be harmful to them. But I think at the heart of the issue is who gets to decide that, right? Is it the parents? Is it the school district? Is it lawmakers? Who gets to decide?
I think that a lot of those voices have been from parents. Mm-hmm. And that's been a very powerful force politically. I wanted to play this clip from a 2021 campaign ad for now Governor Glenn Youngkin against then incumbent Terry McAuliffe with a testimonial from a parent.
As a parent, it's tough to catch everything. So when my son showed me his reading assignment, my heart sunk. It was some of the most explicit material you can imagine. I met with lawmakers. They couldn't believe what I was showing them. Their faces turned bright red with embarrassment.
So it's not mentioned in the ad, but she's talking about Toni Morrison's Beloved, which is a book which talks about Black people's experiences in the slave trade, which those are the sexual assault and...
Absolutely.
And her son, it's also not mentioned, is a high school senior who is taking a college-level course.
Wow. So we wouldn't want our high school seniors at college level reading and understanding to know about history. Okay, gotcha.
Cameron, I wanted to ask you, about your experience. What's missing for children who don't have access to certain materials? So if a student, largely what's being banned are stories of people from the LGBTQAI community and people of color. I wonder for you spoke about books that affected your own experience where you felt seen. Why is this important to you to speak out about? What would they be missing out on?
Students in my school district from Katy, Texas, saw themselves more in lists of challenged and banned books than they saw themselves reflected in the school libraries. These book bans are targeting identity with viewpoint discrimination that's contrary to the First Amendment. And by not having access to literature that can serve as lifelines. We don't learn about ourselves with age-relevant materials. We don't learn about the way society works. And we can't learn about these tough issues like sexual abuse, as Toni Morrison has written about.
What can people do, and who's already doing something to fight back against this big national push?
I'm a student at Brandeis, and moving here from Texas feels like I'm now living in an alternate reality where I'm in such a lovely community of affirmation. And by creating safe spaces that honor the freedom to read, we can read these books, because a campaign ad can show any message, and they know that it's a winning message when they're talking about it, knowing that people aren't going to pick up these books. And so it's our responsibility to read these books, read banned books, so we can know what we are talking about and what they are talking about. By creating these safe spaces and by standing up at school board meetings and in state legislatures, we are able to advocate for our freedom to read. And uplifting student voices in this activism is so important.
On a personal level, how does it feel to be someone that identifies with these books that are being called inappropriate, or identify with messages? I mean, there's so much of this, right? This falls in line as well with Don't Say Gay bills and anti-trans legislation that's being proposed across the country. On a personal level, how does it feel to be fighting back against what feels like a massive wave?
Their definition of inappropriate is synonymous with my trans identity. This definition has allowed us to be targeted, and it does not feel good. When I was the only student in the room at my local school board meeting in Texas, speaking up for my rights as others, adults in the community, were demanding these books be removed. I was the only student in the room, and therefore the only one whose future was directly affected by these policies. Students need to be active in the decision-making in collaboration with parents and families and educators, so we can make decisions about our own education. And that's what's so upsetting, when others are making decisions for us, because we need to be at the table.
I know that a lot of this is very politically motivated. Obviously, we're looking at midterms. I wonder what you predict for this movement, since we've seen efforts to ban books and newspapers and things like that before. And the ACLU is obviously very concerned with First Amendment rights, but it's a long time battle, but this is a surge right now. Where do you see this going, Traci?
Well, first I'd like to say to Cameron that the ACLU of Massachusetts has your back, right? This is an issue that we are focused on, we're paying attention to, we are there, we are ready for the fight. The thing is, fights don't stay won. And like you said, you know, censorship has we have a long history of censorship, right? But we also have the First Amendment. And the First Amendment guarantees us the right to write and read and speak in ways that some people might object to, right? But the First Amendment guarantees us those rights. And we have to work as a community to protect those rights that are guaranteed in the Constitution.
I wanted to ask you both about this because I think you represent different aspects of it, but it also falls in line with this push against CRT, so critical race theory. And now some of the banned books on these lists are books that simply talk about historical incidences that involved Black people or the Civil War or slavery or segregation. How does that fall into this discussion as well? I mean, that are we moving backwards in this way? Is this something that is just politics? I mean, it's a rhetoric that is seemingly growing power.
Marginalized people, you know, this week it is LGBTQ, next week it will be Asian folks, next week it will be Black folks. Marginalized people are marginalized people, and they are often the subject of these kinds of attacks. So whether it's about CRT, whether it's about LGBTQ life experience, there are those who would seek to erase those experiences, those realities, those histories, those truths. And so there is that effort, and the folks that recognize that this is a constitutional right that has to be defended, we have to band together to work towards that. The ACLU of Massachusetts has put out a resource, right? It is a resource that's accessible online for parents and for students and for teachers and librarians who are looking at and considering and facing these kinds of attempts to silence them. And it's a good resource, right? It's something that we hope that people will utilize to understand what their rights are.
Cameron, I wanted to ask you, when you go home, I don't know if you plan to continue this fight in Texas. I don't know if you feel safe to. I just wanted to kind of get a sense of what your plan is.
It's certainly tough in Texas, but having the back of ACLU of Texas as well is so meaningful. Being joined by other organizers in my organization, Students Engaged in Advancing Texas, we are banding together. We're joining the front lines of this advocacy, both remotely and in communities across Texas. And I've been active in this. I plan not to step away until there is a time where we can just simply be happy and not worry about who's going to be next to be targeted. We need to be uplifting voices, not marginalizing further the most suppressed voices.
Right, because that's the concern, right? It's not about people being exposed to certain things. It's about violence, ultimately, right? That's the bigger concern.
Yes. These types of actions have repercussions. And Cameron spoke to it a little bit, right? That this is about erasing people, right? Erasing and ignoring the fact that they are here and that they live their lives. And it's something that has to be addressed, otherwise it's going to continue.
Well, thank you both so much for joining me. I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.